What's cracking, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the DBL podcast, where I'm your host, Rock Solid. On this week's episode, we're going to be talking about how different ways to keep your relationship strong, solid, and healthy. If you're like me and you've started dating in the last, couple of years, you've noticed that, it's hard to date nowadays because of the social war going on between the culture war going on between the sexes, male and female. Men are weak, women are not submissive, blah blah blah. But if you've been lucky enough to find someone that's on the same page as you, congratulations. But as crazy as it sounds, that was the easy part. If you done found somebody in your life, that's the easy part about getting, someone in your life. Now the difficult part becomes now trying to get into a relationship, but also keeping it strong, solid, and healthy. And that's what we're going to try to talk about today. And that's why, we're going to be talking about a few different ways to try to keep you from ending up back into that old nasty dating pool. So as we dive in, let's get into it, right? We all want a relationship, one that kind of satisfies both partners equally, if I'm not correctly, right? One thing that is built on, principles or dependability, realistic expectations, deep caring and positive outlooks. You want to be able to depend on the person that you're in a relationship with. You want to be able to trust them. You want to, as a male, one of the complaints that we have with women is that unrealistic expectations. You want me to be Superman when you know that, I got the size of, Robin, for lack of a better term, right? But it's, you have to really put your effort into trying to be the better person and doing what it takes to make that relationship survive. But often we don't know how to go about getting, the kind of relationship that we want. And that's what I'm hoping that we can help with today. When we were younger, we used to learn about relationships from those around us, like family and friends. Even if they were good or bad relationships, that's where we found out about relationships from. And, we look at how others interact in relationships. Sometimes we get the idea about certain types of relationships from movies or books. It puts us into a false place of mental incapacitation, for lack of a better term, because we want to believe that the people in those books or in those stories, we can be them or we can live those lives. One thing about movies is it's all made up, it's scripted, but you got to remember, somebody made the script, so it is possible for someone to think that way. And same goes for books. But in reality, those are not the people that we're running into on an everyday basis. So we have to be realistic with ourselves as well. And the fact is that there is really no formal way to learn what to do to have a healthy relationship. We're not taught what to do or how to be. It is often something that we've learned by trial and error. And that goes with anything when it comes to love. When I talk about relationships, I always talk about the complexities and how complicated these intimate relationships can be. We come from different backgrounds. We come from unique situations. How a person was raised matters in relationships. Where a person comes from matters in relationships. So imagine how hard it can be when you got two people from very unique situations, complex individuals trying to get together and trying to blend their lives together and their psyches. Trust me when I tell you it can be hard. It's no wonder, that so many relationships don't work out. And it's only because a lot of times we take for granted that the other person that should understand what we're talking about, where we come from, and whether it should come together, if we can do this or we shouldn't do that, how to save money, how to spend money. There are a lot of different complexities that we have to come to the realizations with, that people are different. And so trying to bring those two worlds together is a very difficult thing, but it's okay. That's part of the learning curve until you make that relationship or meet the right person in your life. But still, even when people can be perfectly matched, right? They're not going to always agree on how to live or how to take care of a home or how to save money, like we just talked about, right? But it's not necessarily, it doesn't make it that you can't sustain a long relationships. Every relationship does not end in marriage, and that's okay. It's human nature for us all to relax and get comfortable. I settled into, a lot of time we settle into our single mindset and forget some of the basics to keep all relationships together. While in a relationship, so, let's talk about some of those things, and that's what we really want to get into today. One of the topics that I want to get into on how to get yourselves into a mentally healthy relationships, we're going to talk about being present. Being present isn't just a physical thing. Okay, we have to be very mindful of the fact that it's not just just being in the household and pretending like everybody else doesn't exist. I've been guilty of that myself when I was younger, where I just kind of thought that it was all about me. Everybody had to revolve around the space that I was in. But in a relationship, there are a lot of different distractions vying for your attention. You have to understand that. We get so caught up in our daily life, in our daily grind, that we forget to be present a lot of times, especially with our partner. And sometimes, there are events in our lives that need more of our attention and time and effort. But barring any of these events that with the special attention, it's important that it is essential that you're fully present, for the person that's in your life, and practicing being present, engaging on a daily basis, doing different things to keep you guys together. And in your personal life, this is also like one of the biggest disconnects that you can have, that couples have a lot of times, is that between work, social media, kids, economic struggles and stuff like that. When, if your money ain't right, it's going to play a role in how much energy and effort you can get or put into being connected to your partner. And, it forces you to disengage or, to give less of yourself. And when you're in relationships, they start to struggle. So be mindful that both of you, have to make a mental effort to stay engaged with your partner on so many levels, because sometimes it can get complicated and, people start to become disconnected or even disinterested in, the things that you want, a whole different set of problems. But, you don't want to dwell on no one thing when it comes to relationships. And I know it seems like I'm trying to figure out my words, because I want to make sure that the message that I'm trying to convey today is going to come off correctly. But being engaged and staying connected to your partner is something that you have to be really mindful. Another way to keep your relationship strong and healthy is to stay regularly connected. Okay? First of all, it takes time out of, every day. It doesn't take much time for you to talk, beyond those robotics. Hey, what you doing? How you doing? I'm okay. How was work? What was your day? Blah, blah, blah. Those are the romantic things that, those robotic things that are going on in our everyday life that we sometimes forget about and don't think about. And the longer you're in a relationship, the more effort you have to put into talking, and learning new things about your partner. Even if you think you know everything about them, it's okay to ask other questions outside of the norm when you check in. Who's giving you a problem today? What's making your day so great? When you're talking to your partner while they're at work, tell me what happened today. But when they ask you what happened, don't be afraid to tell them, in my opinion, the short version of what happened. You don't got to give me, then she said, then he said, then I said, and then she said. You don't have to go word for word. You don't have to tell me the next time somebody took a breath. Check in with each other during the day. It takes the least amount of effort. Some of us got jobs where we say we cannot talk or they don't allow us to talk, but we both know that couldn't be further from the truth. Because there's an emergency, there's a way to get through, right? If there's something going on social media, if there's a hot sale going on, if something's going on with your family member, there's a way to talk. And those are the phone calls, the ones where you have to go above and beyond. When you walk into the restroom, you go with your phone with you everywhere you go. So it doesn't take much and it doesn't take a lot of effort to stay connected to your partner. It doesn't take a lot of energy out of you, but it takes more energy for you to want to than it is for you to actually do it. So there is no excuse why you and your partner cannot have a healthy relationship by trying to stay connected to each other in a way that doesn't put your livelihood at risk, but it also keeps you guys both fully entangled within each other. Because, like I said earlier, that the longer you guys are together, the harder it is to want to do those things because you think you know everything. We start to get comfortable. And that's where the problem lies, that we have to make sure we stay on topic with the situation on an everyday basis about what's going on with us and where we are. But and another way to do that, to stay regularly connected with that person, is to be able to openly communicate. This is a very big one to me. Because when things are going both, we can both agree on everything from life and love, and things are great. But there are times when we don't agree, and certain topics arise, and you and your partner, you guys are miles apart on what can make things go or be successful. And these things happen, it's inevitable that they happen. And because, primarily because we're human beings, we come from different backgrounds. I was raised on this, you were raised on that. It doesn't mean that just because we have different opinion that we can't find a common ground. And it's not also about compromising on your beliefs, but it's about finding a common ground to coexist. Because that's the most important part. You got to coexist. As long as you choose to be in this relationship, you have to be able to coexist. And, the one thing in life you can't accuse me of is not communicating. Right? That's just me. I can tell. But life has taught me there is nothing that I cannot solve without an effective communication. Right? And with people, it's, it involves listening as well. Because just talking doesn't make you the greatest communicator. Being able to listen, not with the anticipation of responding, but with the anticipation of hearing what that other person has to say. Because a lot of times the reason why we get the misunderstanding is because I say something, and because you wasn't listening, you're already, getting ready for your response, that you missed the message that I'm trying to say. So we spend way more time in one little area than we have to, and normally you never get to a point of understanding. And the second thing that I learned is there is nothing, absolutely nothing heard if it's not talked about. Often people are driven by like reactions and situations and emotions, emotional responses that come up immediately, and we have a tendency to get defensive or protective of our own point. And, things fly out our mouth that we don't mean. And we usually, we try to say I'm sorry after the fact, but if you had a thought before you spoke, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But knowing each other well enough means that the way we talk to each other and address each other, with any issue is respectful first and foremost. There is no disrespectful way to talk to a person, because once you apologize, you've already showed me the character that you're capable of it. Now it's just a matter of how far are you willing to take it. And, it's not easy. It's, if it was, everybody would be in relationships. People would still be with their exes, or they wouldn't be exes, which means that your partner wouldn't have been single when you met them, right? So you have to understand that, even though I'm joking about it, you have to understand that it's not easy to communicate. And you got to understand that the person that you get in a relationship with, they may not come from a communicating background. So if you're expecting a person to communicate with you, easily and effectively. If you don't have the patience for that, you got to understand you may not need to be in that relationship. This is about doing your homework, understanding, whenever you get upset, what do? Well, I shut down. That's telling me already that you don't communicate very well. Because shutting down is not communicating. Shutting down is the exact opposite of communicating. There is no words that are coming out that are going to change anything. Okay? So remember, there is nothing heard if there's nothing ever said. You have to understand that when a person tells you that they don't argue with somebody, that's another word of saying that they don't communicate. Because just because we're talking or having a serious conversation isn't an argument. And that is a huge problem that I see with people that I've met, people that I meet, people that I hear talking. Is like, oh, I'm not going to argue with anybody. Every conversation is not an argument. Me and you can have a conversation. It can have a heated conversation. Arguments come to the point where we're no longer talking to each other, but we're talking at each other. Now we're arguing. So you got to understand that they're not one and the same. You got to leave plenty of rooms to talk your feelings out whenever you're expressing yourself. It's okay, to say what you got to say and be blood raw with your statements, without being disrespectful or without the other person interrupting or, getting defensive. Because normally when couples have issues, they're afraid to talk because the other person is either aggressive, defensive. But these issues can be resolved by letting each other speak their piece, and being able to. But when you speak your piece, you have to be open to questions. You got to be open to feedback. But over time, you and your partner will develop like a shorthanded way to address a sensitive issue. When you're in your downtime and when things are good in a relationship, that's when you should be trying to talk about things that you cannot talk about when you guys are angry. Shutting down, talking about, so I know you told me that you don't like to argue, but how come every time we have an issue about this or that, why do you perceive it as an argument? But again, the only reason you would do what I just said is if you actually want to talk to that person. And I didn't stutter when I said it. The only reason I would ask that question is if I don't want to argue with that person. What do you got going on today? Nothing. Why not? Because I don't want to do anything. I get that. That's the whole point of nothing, right? But why don't you want to do anything today? You're always talking about we don't go anywhere, we don't do anything. This is a prime opportunity where I'm not doing anything, you're not doing anything. Why not suggest us do something? Because some men don't like to do things, but we're willing to do things. Planning isn't our second nature, some of us, right? So if you want to do something for Valentine's Day, right? What do you got planned for me? Well, I don't have anything planned right now. I'm going to figure it out. Well, here's what I want to do. I want you to take me to this place. I want you to take me to that place. I want you to buy me this. I want you to do me that. Now there's a clear path. Everything is under instructions. But this is what effective communication does. And the only way you get effective communication is when you talk to a person when you're not both angry or upset. And again, you have to want to do these things. You have to want to do these things in order for you to do them. Which brings us to my next subject, right? Don't get lazy. That is by far the easiest thing to do, is get lazy, right? Because over time in a relationship, we all get comfortable. And maybe too comfortable and complacent sometimes, where we just kind of lose focus. And maybe we need to stop, sometimes we even stop taking care of ourselves and take care of the relationship. Because sometimes we get so far off of taking care of ourselves that we forget about the relationship as well. Because, well, if I'm not going to take care of myself, how can I take care of you? Well, that person in the relationship never asked you to stop taking care of yourself. but they care about the need and the health of that relationship. So they're asking you to take care of the needs of the relationship. And the person that's telling you to do those things also have to understand that if this person ain't doing their hair no more, if they're not getting their hair cut, or if they're not doing their nails, or if they're not getting dressed, they may be falling to a different place, and you got to want to know that part of the equation, because it's not going to be long before it starts to affect your part of the equation. So sometimes we have to just be mindful of the people around us, and that's the reason why I say don't get lazy. We might stop going the extra mile sometime to please our partner, and sometimes people get sloppy, for lack of a better term, unhealthy, and they fall back into those old bad habits that they had. Well, if they're not going to try, I'm not going to try. If I'm not going to do this, if that's the relationship, if that's the reason why you walked away from your previous relationship, why would you want to go back to creating that comfort zone because this person doesn't do it? The same way you walked away from that relationship, if you're tired of walking away from those relationships, you communicate openly and effectively with the other person and letting them know, listen, you're starting to create some habits that I'm not comfortable with. It's not a habit that I fell in love with you with. It's not a habit that I want you to get comfortable in. And sometimes you have to remind a person more than once. Stop making things only become negative when you make them negative. Okay? So having to continuously remind a person, maybe they smoked a lot of weed, maybe they got bad memory, maybe, that's not on the top of their priority list. They got other things going on, business minded, work related, kid related, whatever. Family issues, family health, family problem, whatever the situation may be. You have to remember that reminding the person only becomes negative when you make it negative. And in the beginning, of a relationship, that is the purest part of your relationship. And sometimes you have to remember to get back to what first got you together. What you did to make a good impression. Making a good impression and start making those impressions again. That's why in relationships that, the person, that's why you want to grow in love with people. And, there may be a lot that comes with your part that you and your partner have in common. And sometimes those things that you guys have in common are the things that you have to really focus on. But those things you have in common, you have to figure out a way to add to them. You can't get comfortable where you start to get lazy. The one thing I see that more so in with adults is that, we go to work all week and we can get up on time, but then a lot of times we want to sleep in, right? You can sleep in as long as your home is taken care of, as long as your kids are situated. But remember, you're in a relationship, and even if you can't cook, go try to burn down the kitchen. Because you know what that's going to do? Make them get up and come help you. But now it's something that you two can laugh about. It's something that you two can do together. Trying to find things to do together is always the key. You always want to add new things and interesting things into the relationship so that boredom doesn't, kick in. And as a couple, you always want to add a new dimension to the relationship. And I know a lot of you are coming up with this thought process of, when we're going to get to the good part, right? So, openly communicating and being present in a relationship, you want to connect physically, right? Another one of those keys, you want to be able to connect physically. And, for me, I say sit your little horny ass down, okay? We gonna get there. Because if you, I got you. We all know a very big part of any relationship, is going to be being able to physically connect with a person. And it's not always about sex. Obviously, being intimate is a very key and essential part of any healthy relationship, right? But connecting physically is also about showing affection. It's also about embracing. For me, not holding hands, but holding hands and kissing and looking into each other's eyes and, getting your hormones aligned with your partner and trying to get attached attachments are released, and when you're physically connected, more so you got to be physically present, right? But you're getting physically connected, and these help keep the love alive and to keep, try to keep you guys bonded, to one another. But you have to understand, you can't have sex all day, every day. I don't care what any of you think, right? Which means that you have to have other things in your relationship to keep you physically connected to each other, such as sex games, right? They got all these different cards, and they got the dice, and whatever you got at your other, your local stores. You got sex toys, if that's your thing. You can role play. There are a lot of things that can keep you physically connected that don't always involve sex. They may lead to sex, but it also makes it fun. It also keeps the robotics out of it. It also, keeps you involved. But it only works if you're both willing to put the effort, into it. And that's why you rule, one rule I live by in my bedroom is that you can't say no. To be physical with me, you can't say no. Now, that's not saying you don't have the right to your body. It keeps it interesting, right? It keeps it where either you and your partner it means your partner's down for whatever, or your partner has to find a very creative way to say no to what's going on at that particular moment. But it makes it fun. It makes it interesting. It makes you both fully engaged where you're trying to figure out what to do, how to do it, when to do it, where to do it. And the next thing that it does is by being physically connected to each other, it makes you appreciate each other's perspective. Because not being able to say no, why is that something that you want? Well, for me, the reason why you can't say no in the bedroom is that for women, you don't like the word no. Can I have money? No. Can I do this? No. What do you think about this? No. So in the bedroom, that's a place where a man, tries to express his manhood or try to, assert his dominance in a certain situation, and you telling him no, he now has to back off. So for me, I just like to keep it open, loose, keep it honest. That way we can have a conversation. It's okay for you to say no. You just got to find a different way to say it. That's all, right? But it gears you towards that next part of appreciating the other person's perspective. And this is a big one because too often, where there are opposing views and opinions, it is way too easy for us to push your position so that you're the one who's always right. But rather than needing to be right, you have your partner, and you don't have to always bow to the other person's point of view. Wouldn't it be better if each of you had your own perspective, you had your own opinion, something that you liked about them when they first got together, right? And sometimes expressing these differences in these different perspectives and finding a common ground or a neutral space where I can hear you. We can try this, we can try that, we can do this, we can do that. For me, I was always taught that, if I try it your way, right, I'm going to try it your way. If it doesn't work, we tried, we failed, let's go on. Let's not you suggest anything else. That's just me, right? But in the same breath, if it does work, now we have another effective way to make what I want to do work even better. So either way, I win. But again, that's just my way of trying to keep things, light and loose in a relationship, because a lot of times we get so bogged down in trying to be right or trying to make you see what I see or see my point of view that we lose focus on the task at hand. And we must stay in tune, engaged, and focus on trying to keep each other happy, because if I no longer feel like I'm heard, then why would I continue to speak? And if I'm not going to speak, why would I stay? And if I'm not going to stay, why would I want you to touch me? Why would I want you to kiss me? Why would I want to be around you? Why would I not find somewhere else to go? So hearing each other is not only just not talking, but it's also listening to what that person is saying. For me, I think the biggest pet peeve I got is when I'm telling you how I feel, when I'm telling you what I think, I'm telling you what I like and what I don't like, and the next thing that comes out of your mouth is, so what I took from what you said. No, let me stop you there. Don't take anything from what I said. Hear what I said. Because there's no better spokesperson for me than me. You trying to reinterpret what I say or what a person say is you trying to push your narrative onto my statement or onto my feelings. So you have to understand that that's not listening to my perspective. That's not respecting mine. And understanding that my view is I'm a very strong-willed person. I'm a very dominant person. I'm a very alpha type personality. Some of you don't like it, and that's fine. Those people aren't dating me, right? But to date me is to want to hear what I got to say. I like to talk when we're not in the bedroom. I like to talk when we're not arguing, because I feel like if I resolve small issues now, they have no room to become major problems or major issues, right? And that's the reason why we're talking about, different tips to how to keep your relationship strong and successful. And another big way to do that is to be able to argue constructively. Okay. And this could be, a door to openly communicate and appreciate each other's perspective. Okay. Knowing when you've reached your mental limit on a certain topic or discussion. For example, if you guys have been talking about a hot topic, and every time you guys talk about it, it forces you over your mental limit on, like, I'm tired of talking about this topic. There's no result. There's nothing, coming. There's no results from it. Why talk about something if there is no results? And so, sometimes you got to take a break. You got to cool down. You got to, come at from a different perspective. They keep coming back at me. How come you didn't? How come you didn't? How come you didn't? How come you didn't? It becomes repetitive. It becomes boring. It becomes irritating, because maybe I'm not giving you the right answer. Maybe I don't have the capacity to translate what it is you're actually asking me. So maybe you need to ask me a different way. And if you do ask me a different way, I got to be open to using my brain to think. This is where, again, knowing who you're talking to, knowing who you're dealing with, and understanding that each person has their own individuality way of dealing with anything, right? But try not to project your feelings on your partner. State your position clearly. Stay away from derogatory terms, things that may make the other person feel a certain type of way, or it becomes a trigger word for them. You have to stop blaming. You got to stop shaming. Don't drag the past into a discussion, because a lot of times, you're trying to deal with something today, and this person is bringing up something from 10 months ago, a year ago, 6 months ago, whatever the case may be. That's not the issue for today. Let's deal with today's issue. Because when the person you're dating is telling you, how they feel, and understanding that it's not the time for you to air out your issues. Okay? And I'm going to say that again a lot more clearly. When you and I are in a debate, or we're having an argument, or we're discussing whatever the case may be, and I'm telling you how I feel, and I'm telling you what I like, what I don't like, what I'm willing to accept, what I'm not willing to accept, that's not your turn to air out your grievances. I chose the time that I wanted to do this with you, because when you start talking to me about your issues, you're no longer hearing my issues. I gotta trust you enough to give you my honest opinion, but I also in return have to be willing to hear your hopefully honest assessment, but also your feedback. And somebody has to be willing to say, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not right. And when you're happy, you know what I'm saying? When you're happy in a relationship and when you're bored and you got nothing else to do, you can bring that hot topic up then. Because nobody's on their defensive. Everybody is open to listening. And most importantly, you have to be respectful and keep an open mind when you're having a conversation or you're having a disagreement. Hell, we'll even call it an argument. Because you have to be able to argue respectively. Because when you argue respectively, you go into this next part of having realistic expectations. We always try to recognize what was great about our relationship and what keeps us together. But we also have to recognize that even the best relationships may not, they may not end to marriage. And that's okay. As long as you're not unhappy as long as your mental health isn't at risk, everybody isn't marriage material. People come into our lives at different times for different reasons. And maybe that person was prepping you for the person you're supposed to marry, if that's your belief system. Maybe that person is in your life to prove to you that you don't want to be married. Maybe they come to show you that you don't need to be married. Maybe they're showing that you're not ready to be married. But if you're looking past right now, you're going to miss the right now portion of the relationship. Okay? And in other words, sometimes you have to get things you want from the best person available. Because everything we do is about growth. Nobody is born to be a wife. Not mentally anyway. Everybody is not born to be a husband. Not mentally. So you have to go through the dating process. You have to go through, the dating process. Sometimes you have to go through the heartache. Sometimes you got to go through the pain, because if you've never experienced pain, how are you supposed to know how to avoid recreating it? Why does your husband have to be the test dummy? Why does your wife have to be your mental punching bag? Because you don't have realistic expectations about what's going on. Your relationships may have some limitation, and that's okay. It's not easy to find the perfect person. Some people get lucky. Some people lie to you and tell you they got lucky. Some people actually put forth the effort and build the relationship that they want. Some people take time and put the effort into trying to grow in love instead of just trying to be in love. Some people work towards marriage instead of walking in the door saying that I want to be married. Because just because you want to be married, you don't know who your soulmate is. You have to tell yourself, this is my soulmate. And when you find a person that you deem to be your soulmate, right, you have to really put forth the effort to making sure that things are 100. Because people that are meant to be your soulmate, they match, they clink, they come together. That Rubik's Cube just starts to figure itself out, because that's where you're supposed to be. Sometimes relationships are effortless in the beginning, but understanding that cloud nine doesn't last forever. And all of these things are okay as long as you and the person that you're choosing to be in a relationship are on the same page, and you can respectfully try to live and build a life together. But the biggest thing is you have to be true to yourself. Because even relationships, in the closest relationships, it's essential to take care of your own needs. Don't assume that the person you're dating knows what you want just because they're supposed to know you well, because that's not always the case. You have to be attentive to who you are as an individual, separate from your partner. Because unique people, you're both unique people in relationships. And I cannot stress this point enough. Just because you're in a relationship, it does not mean you lose your right to be an individual. You got to understand, just because I'm in a relationship and I'm dating you, I have the right. And I've said this on numerous podcasts before, right? You have the right to be an individual. But you have to trust and know this, right? Listen, look, I'm an introvert. And to be in a relationship with me, you have to understand that there are going to be times when I don't want to be bothered. There are times when I'm going to want to be left alone. There are going to be some times where I want to be by myself. And it doesn't mean that I don't want to be in a relationship with you, or I don't like spending time with you. But I also have to understand that if I date an extrovert, that there are going to be times when I'm going to have to go out. There's going to be times where I have to be social. There are going to be times when I got to go hang out with your friends. That same space that I'm asking for you to give me in my introvert time, right? I also have to be willing to give you that same thing in reverse and in return for your extrovertness. And all of those things are okay, because I don't lose my individuality in a relationship just because I'm dating you. If I don't want to be bothered, I don't want to be bothered. It doesn't mean I love you any less. Doesn't mean I like you any less. Doesn't mean I don't want to be around you. Doesn't mean I want to do any of those things, right? It just means that today, in this moment, I don't want to be bothered. Why is that such an issue for you to have an issue with me? You know who you dated. You know who you got involved with. We all have those little quirky things, right? But when you start dating that person, these are the things that you have to let them know up front. This is why I try to tell people, when you meet someone, you want to, talking about the good things, people don't have a problem with. People have a problem with the bad things about you, the things that people don't like. I don't like to have deep conversations. Well, if you're a person that likes to have deep conversations and this person doesn't, that's one box, that's one check in the no box. I love to have sex 2-3 times a day. Well, if you're older, or if you don't have a very high sex drive and you like to have it once, that should go in the maybe column. I'm open to it, but I can't. Maybe it takes the right person. Maybe you're the person, right? Or if you're just flat out saying, no, you get it once a day, that's all you get. If you can't accept it, whatever. It goes into whichever box. But dating correctly, having realistic expectations, and openly communicating with people is a very key and essential part to being, who you are. But the biggest thing about being in any relationship, there is no one way to be happy, or there's no way to be mentally healthy in a relationship, no one specific way. We're all learning as we go. Even for as long as we've been on earth, we're still learning how to be human in different ways. We're recreating the wheel every single day with every single person that's born. There's a different way. But one thing, you have to understand, but these are just some tools that we're talking about today that are going to give you a different path, a different direction, for lack of a better term, into another way to make your relationship happy, to make your relationship solid, to make your relationship what you want it to be. To be in a relationship, you have to truly, truly put the effort into being in that relationship. But not only you. The other person that you're in a relationship with have to take those same objectives. You have to have that same mindset. You have to understand who it is you're actually dealing with on a daily basis. Do they have the capacity to give me the type of relationship that I want? And if you're being honest with yourself, because they've demonstrated it to you during the dating period. Hopefully you didn't meet, date, have sex, and then move in. Because now you're learning on the job. And most on-the-job trainings never work out well. You either want that job or you don't. Understanding that everybody isn't in your life to be your husband or your wife. Some people are there to teach you a lesson. Some people are there to give you reason. Some people are there to give you perspective. It shouldn't take you 10 years of your life to figure it out. Because if it does, that's a you problem. Not a them problem, but a you problem. Because they clearly are comfortable with who they are. They've been doing it for 10 years. You didn't see the signs that that's not who you are. So everybody is in your life for a reason. Everybody brings their own separate purpose. But if you don't have the mental capacity to elevate yourself, elevate the people around you. In sports, a good quarterback will lead a receiver to where they need to be to keep them out of harm's way. In basketball, a good point guard sees what you're about to do next and anticipates. And if they think it's a bad move, they turn it back and go the other direction to let you know you're not where you're supposed to be. It's anticipation. It's direction. It's reflection. The same thing is no different in relationships. The assist has to come from you. If you know the person that you're dating doesn't have the capacity to do this, don't put them in a position to fail. Put them in a position where they can be in the right place at the right time to be successful. Because the more successful they are, if it's the right person, the more successful they are, the more likely they're going to be happy. And if they're happy, they're going to make you happy. You're happy because you manipulated the situation and gave them you gave them the assist to put them in the right position. It's not up to you to bring it up to them, because now you're taking away from their achievement, because they accomplished it. Because just because you put them in the right place don't mean that they're going to do the right thing. They chose to do the right thing. So you guys both played a role because you're both in a relationship together. So just be mindful of this. Just look into it. Investigate yourself. Investigate your relationship and ask yourself, am I in the right place? And if this isn't a relationship that I want to be married, and just because you want to be married don't mean you know how to be married. And just because you think you know how to be married don't mean you know how to be married to the person that you haven't married yet. So there are steps, there are levels, there is a path to get into what we want and what it is that we want to do. You just got to find your own. But I'm not going to hold you guys up today. I want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. And as always, this episode may not be for you. You've gotten to the end. You may realize this episode is not for you. But it may be for somebody that you know, somebody that you care about. Send it to them. Send it their direction. Send them to the podcast, to any platform. Send them to YouTube where we're doing a video at, and you can see me live, because some people didn't realize that you can see me live now. Go to go to the blog on the thedblpodcast at wordpress.com. There's a lot of different ways to communicate and talk. Until next time, everybody, one love and peace out.